to take it back to 1930s National Socialist Germany, Heinrich Himmler in the Wewelsburg Castle established a black sun cult. And on the floor of the castle, you could find the symbol of the black sun. Now, as I said, this is an ancient symbol. This is not a symbol that is restricted just to use by the National Socialists, but it has become, in recent years, deeply associated with white nationalism. That symbol is another yantra. It's a very powerful yantra, but it has quite a different meaning from the will to the masculine that the swastika has. So the black sun is a symbol of negation. It is negation of the masculine principle by the feminine principle and a return to immanent power in the anahata. It is a symbol of vamishara, or the left-hand path. So the idea of the black sun is that you have a rising force of the moon that eclipses the sun. And in this moment, the mother overtakes the father, and then you have the rising sun in the Manipura coming up and resting in the heart, and you have a new king, a new Chakravartin. As I said, the Chakravartin rests at the heart. So in this formation, we have a deep transformation of society, an overturning of the soil, and a return to immanent power. Unfortunately, for most white nationalists, they have misinterpreted this symbol to represent just another aspect of solar order. They believe the black sun to be a force for the destruction of all the things that they don't like, which happen to be the aspects of Shakti that are in fact emphasized and elevated by the black sun. It's very similar to the way that white nationalists will now embrace the symbol of Kali as some kind of avenging angel that will come into the world and destroy all of their political opponents, when in fact Kali represents that kind of deep divine femininity that would be considered utterly degenerate by white nationalists. The only thing that you could say has a strong connection to Kali within white nationalism is the obsession over materiality. But in this way, Kali would be a force that is playing with these people, possessing them, and not doing a dance with them. See, when we practice Tantra, we're not trying to become possessed slaves to the gods. We're trying to integrate them to gain power as brother and sister of divinity. Another important point to emphasize in terms of uh, Kali and the relationship to divinity within white nationalism is that white nationalism has become very atheistic and from its foundation was quite atheistic. The gods become archetypes, Jungian archetypes, instead of living forces. And so there is a contemplative perspective that is taken here, a deep contemplation in relationship to the material. This is another expression of pulling yourself away from Shakti while still being compelled by Shakti. Just because you're operating from a point of contemplation does not mean that you're going to escape domination by the material. White nationalism is totally obsessed with the material. It's obsessed with economy. It's obsessed with familial relationships, with material borders, with the physical body. Everything is race. I once heard James Mason say that race is the only reality that matters. That's the only thing. And I've heard a lot of white nationalists say the same thing. And in the white nationalist literature, this is the one point that is continuously expressed. Race is all that matters. Race is all that matters. So that is why you could say that these people are compelled by Kali, but they do not understand Kali. They do not understand Kali in such a way that they could relate to her in a place of self-empowerment. Instead, they become slaves to the blood, slaves to the blood without ever actually integrating it. Blood becomes an idea for these people. They don't have any real interaction with Shakti. They don't have any real interaction with the blood. They are compelled by it. And that is one of the big esoteric secrets of National Socialism. These people who claim to be very closely related to the blood are in fact very detached from it. Blood becomes a process of ideation and eventually is absorbed into the light of divine masculinity. Everything becomes a suicide cult at that point. And this is actually what happened at the end of National Socialist Germany. You had many of the ideologues within National Socialist Germany telling the common man, woman, and child within the nation to just fight to the death. And by the way, while we're at it, burn all of the castles. Make sure that all of these things are destroyed so that future generations cannot access them. Well, there you go. That's everything being absorbed into the oneness of total order, thrown into the abyss. And modern white nationalists think that the black sun represents this abyss. This is where the accelerationist tendency comes into play. It's acceleration into death, death of everything. It's funny that a group of people who claim to love their blood and their heritage are so willing to sacrifice their own families, their own people, for an idea, for a utopia. A utopia, when taken to its extreme, is just nothingness. Because after all, that is what is at the end of the line of the will towards divine masculinity. Ego death, which we also call emptiness. There's another religious movement and political movement that takes this approach. It's called Christianity. And in fact, there is a strong link between Christianity and white nationalism. I mentioned James Mason earlier. James Mason, who wrote Siege, which is one of the most influential modern white nationalist texts, he associates with the Christian identity movement. Now, there's a question as to whether or not he really legitimately believes in the tenets of Christianity, but it doesn't matter because he sees the magical significance of Christianity and he's willing to exploit it in order to draw more young people into this cult of divine masculine order. This is all very ironic, by the way, because the original stated goal, esoteric goal, of National Socialism was to destroy the Jewish world order, which would require destruction of Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and all other forms of Abrahamism. And in fact, there were many prominent members of the original National Socialist Party, including Hitler himself, who had a lot of really brutal things to say about the Abrahamic tradition. But at the same time, they were willing to work with that tradition in a magical process because they realized that the divine masculine spark within that tradition was something that fit within their overall magical profile. And so we have the development of something like positive Christianity, a contradiction in terms by my own taste, but Hitler believed that positive Christianity could be a way forward for National Socialist Germany. And all positive Christianity is yet again another expression of the divine masculine will to order with the compulsive integration of materiality. And that is the defining aspect of the magical tradition of National Socialism.